Hello my friends, and welcome to my first impressions video for Phighting. This is a game on Roblox that a ton of people have recommended to me, despite the fact that the game barely has any people playing it, which of course I suppose makes sense because people want more people to be playing it. Apologies in advance to those people because no matter what I do or I recommend, people don't listen to me. That's been proven time and time again, but I promise you I try my best out here for you. Also, a bit of a non sequitur just because I'm recording this almost right after I put out my Tales of Tenorio video, but goddamn, people are upset with me about that now. People get upset with me when I'm upset with games and I call them shit, and people get upset with me when I like games and I call them good. So I guess people will just get upset with me no matter what I do. Whatever. Anyways, Phighting is a really good game, and it's a game that you should play. So it's going to be linked in the description of the video. You can go down there, click it, and play it, because unlike a lot of the other crap on Roblox, this one's good. That being said, I think Phighting has three distinct things that sort of hold it back and are probably at least some of the reasons that the game is currently sitting at around 300 to 500 players, rather than being a big heavy hitter on Roblox with a lot of people playing. Because if we're just speaking directly from the amount of effort and time it took to make this game and the sheer quality of it, then it should absolutely be at least somewhere near the front page and not all the way down here. But anyways, I think there are three distinct things that are holding it back. And those three distinct things are class balance, team balance, and the overall progression and longevity of the game. And I suppose we can just sort of go in that order, starting off with the class balance, which is very questionable at best. Now, a lot of this I'm sure is going to come down to skill issue, because there are some things that I'm just bad with, but I can also see directly from playing the game and seeing what other people pick and how other people fail when they pick certain classes that the class balance is all over the place. Now, granted, of course, the class balance is going to be really hard when you have so many different distinct play styles. You're not possibly going to be able to balance things across the board. There are always going to be sort of rock, paper, scissors matchups where one class is going to absolutely obliterate another one. So for example, if you have the bio something or other, sorry, I can't remember the name of the class off the top of my head, but if you have something like that going up against the hyper laser class, which is basically a sniper, well, it's pretty obvious that the quick melee class is going to dumpster all over the sniper class if it gets up close because, well, it's a sniper class. It's not made for close range. But that being said, while we're on the topic of the hyper laser, it just seems like this class is horrifically bad. And I don't know if it's because I just suck or what, but it just seems terrible. The laser has a charge up, you can't jump while it's charging up, you go slower while it's charging up, and if you hit someone it does 20 damage. Sure, it's a hit scan weapon, and so you can just sit in the back of the map and shoot it at people and chip them down for 20 damage, as well as having the ability to headshot people, but really at the end of the day, this class just sits in the back, and if anyone gets close to it, it gets obliterated, but if it sits in the back and doesn't get obliterated, it still barely does anything. One of its abilities is a grenade, which doesn't seem all that helpful, and its other ability makes an explosion and speeds you up, or teleports you. But the teleport takes so long to come out that if you have a melee class on you, you're never going to be able to use it because it gets canceled if you get hit during the startup. And honestly, even if the teleport was instant and was really good at getting away, the melee class is just going to run after you, catch you, and start killing you anyway. Of course, you could cite the example of having teammates to cover your back, so if someone shows up and they're just going out of their way to kill you with a melee class, someone else on your team can come to help you out. But the overall damage per second that you can put out with this class just makes me wonder why it's even in the game to begin with. It looks really cool, but in terms of practicality, well, it's just kind of sort of bad. And that's just one example of several. There are a fair few classes in the game that feel like they excel against some classes, but they're just so horrifically bad against so many others that there's no way any sane human being would pick them unless they were actively trying to throw or just really wanted to try something different, I suppose. Like I said, class balance is one of those things that I don't think is ever going to be able to be perfected, just because there's so many factors in this game, because you have to consider who you're fighting against, what classes are they, what classes are on your team, whether or not you're getting pressured or not. Just there's so many factors. But at the end of the day, things like the hyper laser just seem awful, and it's not just this class, I promise. Also a bit of a non sequitur, but I just want to mention it right now. Despite this being the first time that I was playing this game, I came top 3 in damage in practically every single round I played. And I'm not saying that to like flex and be like, damn, I'm so good at video games. But I just wanted to say it because I already know that there's people in the comments section being like, Eclipse, you just suck, you don't know what you're talking about, yada, 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 yada. So I wanted to reassure those people maybe to some extent that I wasn't just doing horrifically bad in every single match and just have no idea what I'm talking about whatsoever. Now, the other big thing when it came to balance was, of course, the team balancing or the overall match balancing. This is another one of those things where I feel like it's sort of complicated, and there are good ways to do it, and there are bad ways to do it. And in its current iteration, there just appears to be no team balancing whatsoever. It's just completely random who gets put on what team. And that in of itself, I don't really have a problem with. What I do have a problem with is when one team is so much better than the other ones that they're just getting wiped over and over and over and over again. I had one match, hopefully it'll be on screen now, where it was like over halfway through and my team had 0 kills and their team had like 17. That's ridiculous. And I really think that the answer or solution here is to make it so if one team is getting stomped, there's some sort of buff applied to them, whether it be a damage buff or a speed buff or something to try to claw them out of this hole. Because I see almost sort of the same trend that you see in games like Overwatch with just bad players, where if the entire team gets killed at different points or gets ganged up on one by one, then when they respawn, instead of waiting for their team to come back and then push together, they chip in one by one and they just keep getting killed. And that's exactly what tends to happen here, and it causes the matches to spiral out of control. So another solution here could potentially to have it so that it's wave spawning rather than spawning you as fast as it can, but that can also bring up issues where people have to wait a significant amount of time to spawn, and people might not like that. But it might be better overall for the health of the game if people have to wait an extra 10 seconds to spawn, if it means that the whole team spawns at once and they don't just keep trickling in and getting obliterated. That, or like I said, some sort of buff that's applied to losing teams, some sort of comeback mechanic, because as it stands, a lot of games that I played were blowouts, and it's not very much fun to be on the receiving or honestly even the giving end of the blowout. And finally, the last thing that I think is holding the game back, and probably the biggest thing that's holding the game back, although with my recent video on the strongest battlegrounds, maybe I'm just wrong on this point, but that's the overall longevity and progression of the game. To put it simply, the game doesn't have any of that. There is no progression in this game whatsoever, unless I suppose if you count skins. You log in and you have every single class unlocked right from the get-go, and that's that. Now granted, I have a lot of respect for the developers and totally understand where they came from with their systems. They didn't want to be a pay-to-win game, they didn't want to be a grind-to-win game, and so in order to prevent those things, they just made it so everyone has access to everything right from the start. But the problem with that is, sometimes stuff like this is just a necessary evil, because without it, people log in, they play for a few games, they might just get bored and quit, because they have nothing to work towards. Having goals for people to work towards is really important, and it's extra impactful if the things that they're working towards will directly make a difference to how they play the game. Now yes, it absolutely sucks when you're fighting against something that you don't have and you feel like it's overpowered and it keeps killing you over and over again. But on the flip side, if the class balance is properly implemented, that shouldn't necessarily be a problem. I know it's highly unlikely, but I think the game could seriously benefit from locking classes behind some sort of gameplay requirement. I know that's probably going to get me a lot of crap, and maybe rightfully so, but as I said already, in order to keep people playing, you need to give them a reason to keep playing. Overall, the game reminds me a lot of Critical Strike, which was an old Roblox game that was unfortunately discontinued because the owner got outed as a pedo or something like that. You know, the standard Roblox affair. But regardless, there's a lot of similarities that were shared between this game and that one. But one of them that is obviously not shared is the fact that in Critical Strike, you had currencies and you unlocked classes by playing with any of your classes that you had, as well as the fact that there were event classes that you could only unlock at certain points of the year, and then if you didn't, then you wouldn't be able to get them until that time came around in the next year, which honestly sounds pretty terrible and anti-consumer, but it also added a bit of a mystique to those classes. And because all of the classes in Critical Strike for the most part were balanced around each other, it made it so even if you didn't have an event class that somebody else had, there was almost certainly a normal class that you could get that would directly counter or come close to directly countering that class. Regardless of all of this stuff though, I think Phighting is a very good game. I had some other minor gripes, like the fact that the hit feedback was kind of questionable and it was sometimes hard to tell whether I was doing damage or someone else was doing damage, or really if damage was being dealt at all. And there were a lot of instances where it felt like I was just sort of throwing two rocks together, or at least my opponent and I were throwing rocks at each other and just like smashing them into each other over and over again, and someone would win. And it didn't seem like it really mattered that much whether I knew what the opponent had, it just mattered what I had. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but the game is still fun. The map gimmicks were hilarious. I think my favorite map was this plane map, where a plane will come in and land right in the middle of the map, and I had to have been killed by this plane at least 3 or 4 times just because I wasn't paying attention. And it wasn't just me. There were a lot of people getting hit by a plane, and it was really funny. So yeah, Phighting in its current state, definitely a bit of casual fun, but not much more than that. And whether it gets more game modes or more competitive in nature, whether it gets a progression system or any sort of balance patches, I'm not sure if it'll ever really get up there, but I do think there's a chance. With that though, I'm wrapping up the video. I don't have too much else to say, and I'm sorry for the ramble, but hopefully this can help someone out, or get someone to play this game that otherwise might not have. If you enjoyed the video, you can leave a like and subscribe. If you didn't, don't. And with all that being said, have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you guys next time.